Okay, so I never thought that I would be doing a second video, but I just want to thank everyone who took the time to listen to my video or watch my video. I was a little bit hesitant to post it, especially on Facebook. I actually recorded it on Thursday and posted it the same day on Instagram, but I didn't on Facebook because I felt like there's more people I know on Facebook, but I'm glad I did it because by posting about it, maybe half an hour later, I got a message from a relative who said, I have the same thing that you have. I was like, really? And then they sent me, reports and pictures of the prescription and we spoke about maybe 40 minutes, I guess. And we've never spoken that long before. I think and we may have spoken 1 or 2 minutes last time I saw her, I believe, was at my father's funeral in 2014. So to hear somebody else, in your family, um, going through the same thing, I was very shocked. I wanted to cry because, she was diagnosed about 3 years ago, and I was 2 years ago, and apparently we're only 1 year apart, so we more likely got diagnosed around the same age. And that is interesting. I've always wondered, is there a genetic component to this disease? And I've looked it up a lot, and the verdict is still out. There's still much more research to do. Um, it's possible. So I have the antibody. It's called anti-Jo1, and it's also possible to have the antibody and not express the condition at all. So there could be various factors that triggers um, myositis, and I've tried to do some research, and there's nothing set in stone. There's only suggestions, as is any autoimmune disease. No one really knows. All we know is for some reason our tissues are attacking the normal cells in the body, or the antibodies are attacking the normal cells in the body, and we don't know why. A lot of people have come up to me, a lot of loved ones, and giving me suggestions as maybe why. Some people say, oh, maybe you're exercising a lot because it's a muscle condition. There's no really proof for that. Although when I spoke to my cousin, she said that exercise did sometimes trigger it. But that's there's a lot of work to do on that. One thing that they know for sure is certain drugs can trigger it. For example, if you're on statins, which is a heart medication, I believe, that definitely triggers myositis. Obviously, that was not my case. I was not on any medications or any drugs um, when I was diagnosed. And in terms of stress, I have a big idea that stress sometimes can trigger myositis. I think that if you have the predisposition, if I'm pronouncing that right, to get it, maybe stress can cause it. I did talk to some people on the support groups and asked them, what was going on before you got diagnosed, and that's a popular question among everyone. And a lot of people said they were going through something stressful, and there were a couple of people who just had a baby. So it's all possible. Some people have come up to me. I remember when I just came back from the hospital and I was at work, and I could see all my colleagues. So it's just a small company. They're always checking to see what I'm eating. Am I eating healthy? Because, you know, could food be a factor? Gluten. And I know a lot of people with autoimmune diseases, with myositis, has decided to go gluten free, and it seems to help. Um, so for a while, I tried and I failed. Going gluten free, I did speak to my rheumatologist about it, and she didn't really seem to think that that would matter. I do realize I get some issues with, like when I eat certain foods, so I did get tested for celiac disease, and it came back negative. And so I'm still leaning towards a little bit of stress. Also, if you get an infection or some sort of cold or virus, you can also it can also trigger myositis. And I do remember after around a couple of months before I got sick, November, December, I was coughing a lot and I had a cold, but it didn't feel like a normal cold. So that could just be the symptoms of the disease itself, and not rather me getting an infection based on and causing the condition. So as of now, there is no set in stone cause of myositis, and it could be a cumulative things. It could be environment, it could be anything. We don't know. What we do know is it affects women more. It can happen in any sex, male or female, but it does affect women more. And as well, according to the Myositis Association, it says that it has a higher amount in Black women, African American women. So I don't know what link that could be, but it does affect women in general more. And I think autoimmune diseases in general seems to affect women. And that's something that I guess we have to look into a little bit more. So when I did that initial video, I was getting ready for my IVIG, and IVIG is basically intravenous immunoglobulin, and it's a medication made up of human plasma, and it contains the antibodies of human plasma. So it's basically a collection of other people's antibodies. And the idea, I'm not 100% certain, but the idea is by bringing in those antibodies, it can help strengthen my own antibodies. And if I'm giving wrong information, please tell me. And what it's supposed to do, because my antibodies keep attacking, regular cells, that is supposed to help me a bit. And usually, for me, it's twice a month for 3 months, back to back. So I did my first in March, and then April, and then I'll do it in May. So I also did it in 2018 as well. And as I said before, it's kind of an expensive treatment, so they don't always want to do that first. They want to look at other options. And so we did it in 2018. We got my creatinine kinase back to normal, and as I said, I got I don't want to say cocky, but I just I'm better now, and I went off my medication, and it's shut up again, and we've been trying to get it back to normal, and it did get back to normal after I went off my medication. But once I start tapering the prednisone, so with prednisone, I can't remember if I said in the first video, is so once the CK goes down, and once my symptoms are not as bad, like the weakness and so on, we start to reduce the prednisone. But you have to reduce the prednisone slowly. You can't just stop taking it, or you can't just go from 20 milligrams to 10 milligrams. You have to go 20, maybe 15, 10 milligrams. And when you reach 10 milligrams, every month you gotta go 9, you gotta go 8, you gotta go 7. And the reason why is for 2 reasons. First of all, the body needs time. The body itself has to fight the inflammation. So by just cutting off the prednisone, then the body doesn't have time to make its own cortisol. And as a result, I'll be back to square one. Also, when you stop taking prednisone after taking it for a long while or at a high dosage, your body can go into shock and go into withdrawal. And it happened to me last year. I either went down too fast, or I skipped a couple of dosage, and I was getting very lightheaded, very fainty. And then one afternoon, I came out from the bus, and I was just walking, like a drunk person, and I fell. I couldn't, my body couldn't hold it, so I fell on the pavement. And I remember lying on the pavement and smiling, and no one came to help me, to pick me up. But I think people thought I was drunk, because I was just smiling. I was just like, is this happening? Am I literally on Royal York Road? It was on Royal York Road, because I was just opposite the Royal York Station. Am I really lying on the pavement right now? Finally, I got up and tried to play it off really cool, and I couldn't find my glasses. I kept looking over my glasses, and this guy's looking at me. It's like, oh my gosh! Turns out the glasses was in my hoodie, and that was an interesting thing. And I talked to my doctor about it, and he just said, when you're getting up, because it always happened when I'm getting up from a sitting position, I'll just take your time and do that. So back to the IVIG, as I said, it's about 2 times a month for 3 months, and it usually takes about 5 or 6 hours. So when I get in there, check in with the registration, go to the floor, and the nurse take me, and I'm on a chair, which is like one of those it has a recliner. So I usually like put my feet up, get a blanket, and they'll put the IV in my arm, and it usually takes about 5 to 6 hours. And yeah, just relax. One of the things that needs to happen when you're doing IVIG is make sure that you have lots of fluids. The first time in March I didn't, and when I came home I was really weak, and I was nauseated, and I had a headache, and it was no good. And so I went back the next day, second round. I told my nurse what was happening, and she said, you have to drink lots of fluids. So during the procedure, I definitely made sure that I had my water bottle, and I kept drinking water, and I didn't have any more side effects. So that's important to do. And yeah, right now it's just about living it. I have to admit, when I first decided to share a little bit about this this condition, before I made the video, I would just put a little bit here and there on Facebook about it. But a lot of it was based on shallowness. I don't know if you can call it that, because, I didn't want to be walking up to people on the street and they're making comments about my weight, because, it's a very sensitive issue for me and for other people as well. And I remember one morning, one of the things about prednisone and so on is it does affect your mood. It can actually make you really, really high, but also really, really low. So I had been, after a couple of months after diagnosis, and then back home and went back to work, I started feeling really depressed, like really, really depressed. It was really bad, and part of that could be the prednisone. Also, it causes insomnia at the beginning for me, so I wasn't sleeping, and then I started getting this acne on my face, and I've never gotten acne before. So, and that was definitely a direct result of the prednisone. I think my aunt recommended me using tea tree oil on my face, which I did, and it cleared up. I also got lots of stretch marks on my arms, which is surprising because now it's actually clearing up. Lots of stretch marks on my arms, my stomach, my legs, which makes sense because basically my body just exploded, like stretched, and I became overweight. And I remember one morning I woke up and I was feeling really good about myself. I was like feeling good. I put on I call it my outside work clothes. So basically, when I go out on conferences or meetings for work, I'll put a little extra dress up, extra makeup. So I did that. And I was running late. I didn't get time to eat my breakfast. So I went to the Tim Hortons, which I've been going through once in a while for about 7 years. It's close to my job. And these women at the Tim Hortons, I've become a little friendly with them, and we chat and we joke around, and they give me extra Timbit once in a while. And she saw me and she's like, oh, baby? I was like, no, baby, just... And I kind of explained it to them. And I had one or two people ask me, what happened. And, it's not that uncommon. I mean, if you hadn't seen me in a few months and then all of a sudden you see me, you're going to want to think about that. You want to ask that question, which is fine. I think that, this whole association with weight and sickness and illness and looks really needs to be looked at a little bit more, especially now with this whole COVID-19. And although it doesn't really apply to people in Canada, a lot of African Americans are dying, and one of the first things they're saying is, oh, they're obese, and oh, they have a lot of other underlying conditions. And that may be part of it, but we know there's more to the story in terms of, I'm sure a lot of them are essential workers and have low income jobs and are in putting themselves in positions, well, not putting themselves in position, but are in a position to contract a disease faster, and in terms of healthcare and so on. But I don't want to get into that more. I just want to stick to what I really know, which is my experience. And my experience is my experience. Some people have different experience, but a lot of us more or less a similar experience that we have in terms of dealing with myositis. Myositis, unfortunately, it's a chronic illness. I know some people get it and then they're able to manage it and then it never comes back, whereas some people are on it for long term. I had a housemate actually, which is interesting, who has dermatomyositis. Well, we used to be housemates. I think we're friends now, but yeah, she's helped me a lot deal with it, and she's been dealing with it for like years. So she had it since before I even met her, and I never paid attention to what she was going through. I knew she was going through something, but I never really learned about it. And here I am now in that position, and she's been helpful um, to guide us too. And as I said, you never know what's going to happen. Um, so yeah, in terms of living with mastitis, it's been okay. I basically, for the past 2 years, so from 2018, I have been at the hospital almost at least once a month for the past 2 years. There was one month that I skipped in May. I remember 2018 because I was just like, you know what, I've had enough. And but ever since then, it's either I have to go to do my blood work to make sure my creatinine kinase is normal, um, or checking up with my general physician who checks up the other stuff. So we have the rheumatologist who deals with the inflammatory part and deals with the disease itself, and deals with my prednisone and my methotrexate when I can take it and when I can't take it. And then the GP deals with other stuff like my mental health. It's very important. So I do have a therapist. When I was at St. Joe's seeing my GP, I was, as I said, I was in bad shape, and I was actually hospitalized after, irrespective of my condition, because I just couldn't handle it. Like mentally, I just couldn't handle it. I didn't know. I know, and I was pushing myself, and got in contact. They were able to match me up with a social worker, and she has helped me immensely. But then she left the hospital to work somewhere else, and then I couldn't see her because of ethical reasons, like in terms of she couldn't take money from me because she was seeing me for free. So she gave me a bunch of psychologists to go look into that also are in a sliding scale. So in Toronto, there are therapists who take less money. Usually they're grad students and so on. And she did give all that resources to me, and I called, but I never actually went. And then finally, I told my GP that I just wanted her, so they were able to get me into contact with her. So about almost 2 years I've been seeing the same therapist, and I think that's helped a lot. And not just in terms of dealing with my illness, but so many other things, dealing with grief from the death of my father, and just all around everything. And I think with her help, as well as with my non-paid therapist, as I call them, my aunt, my friend, um, even my colleagues once in a while, I think with all that together has given me a lot of confidence to be open about what's going on. And it's totally a personal decision to make. Some people don't want to share, and that's totally normal. And I felt like that for a while. But a lot of things that I've learned and is from people who have opened up themselves. I used to follow this individual, I still do, on social media, and they were always very open about their lives, and I was like, wow, you know, that's sharing a lot of information. They're not related to autoimmune, but something else. And you know what? Even though I was like, whoa, They're sharing a lot. Their sharing helped to know that, hey, you're not alone. You're not alone. And I also learned a lot. And that's really the point right now. Before it was, oh, I just want people to know that, hey, yeah, I'm fat because I'm taking prednisone. And as I said, I'm sensitive with the whole weight issue. That's something that I will work on. I am working on. Obviously, I'm doing a video. I haven't updated my Facebook profile picture since the one that I took a couple of months before I got diagnosed. And obviously, you can see the difference in the face. Like, my face was all drawn out. As a matter of fact, when I was looking back at some pictures in November, December, when I was starting to lose weight because of the dermatomyositis, what's interesting is that I was sick. I was sick, and looking, I wasn't like stick thin or anything like that, but I had lost a lot of weight, and then looking at my face, and I could see, wow, it's so drawn out. And again, that's where we go back to the whole like weight and health. It's more complicated than that. It really is. And as you know, as I said, me getting COVID-19 puts me at a higher risk of getting it more intense, even though I'm young, because I'm on immunosuppressants. And if I were to die from COVID-19, and the first thing would be like, oh, well, look at her, like, yeah, she was probably unhealthy and so on. So it's very interesting to look at how all these things factor in. So the fact that I'm making this videos, this video and the last video, obviously shows that I am coming to terms with my illness, and I also realized that it's not a death sentence. It's not something that I can't beat or live with, as long as I take my medication, and I keep myself healthy, and it's funny because there's so many conditions out there. There's people with lupus and MS, and a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are struggling in silence. And yes, you have, even when you do have support, like your friends, your family, and so on, it's still very lonely. And you're dealing with all these issues. I used to be able to run a 5K. I did a Scotiabank marathon, and now I feel like after a nice 30-minute walk today, I'm really suffering tomorrow, and my muscles are weak. And sometimes it's tough, but you just have to keep pushing through. As I said, it's not a death sentence. As long as I take my medication and I, do what I'm supposed to do, I should be fine. And I think that's it. I think I've kind of explored what I wanted to explore. I don't think I have much more info to share. But one more thing I could bring up is a lot. It's also an invisible illness. So I know a lot of people who share their stories talk about how they're being judged because they park in a disability area, and someone will be like, you're not disabled, but they don't know, like, it can be really debilitating. Even if your CK is close to normal, like, it can be really painful. Like, I've had times where my body just stiffens up. And I noticed one day I was working on a project at work, very intense project, and had me running back and forth to the printer and all that stuff, and I can feel it in my body, like I was so stiff and I was not feeling well. And it's not always, it's not always seen. That's why it's called these illnesses. Like, I think fibromyalgia also as well. Um, they're called invisible illnesses and invisible disability. So next time you see someone getting out of the car and they're in the disabled parking spot, I think we still use the word disabled. If not, I'm sorry. Um, don't just assume because you don't know what's going on with that person. Another thing that is really interesting about chronic illnesses and autoimmune conditions, as I said, it affects women a lot. Black women a lot. Some people had a really, really hard time getting diagnosed, because the symptoms are so general and so they're not always specific, especially if you don't do blood work. And there are people who have been fighting for a year or two, going to the doctors, having doctors not take them seriously, having their own spouse not take them seriously, their whole family members not taking seriously. I mean, that was not my experience, but that is a lot of other people experience. In terms of not taking it seriously, probably my experience, I got diagnosed pretty fast, whereas a lot of people it takes like a year or so to diagnose. But that's probably because my experience was so extreme when we did my blood work. So that's something else that needs to be looked at, is that just because you can't find something in the person. I mean, I went to my doctor and he just said stop eating meat and drinking alcohol. But that's where I'm not blaming him or anything like that. That's because he had seen me a couple of times before and I was fairly healthy, and all of a sudden, and then the second doctor did a little bit more, and he actually messaged me and asked me to, when they figure out what it is, please let him know. And I went back and I told him, this is what it is and this is what it is. So even doctors wouldn't know, especially general physicians wouldn't know about this condition. So that's pretty much it. And thanks for listening again. This was a little bit longer, so I apologize. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.